Suburban Sentinel here with another firearms related policy video. Today I want to go back to the Brady Campaign against gun violence. For any of you unfamiliar with the Brady Campaign, this is an organization that is one of the largest and most influential gun control advocacy groups. I have on the screen here the homepage to the Brady Campaign's website. I want to focus in on a counter that's prominently displayed on their website at all times. So if you'll bear with me here, I'll get out This counter displays the number of Americans shot in the current day, as well as the number of Americans shot so far during the year. The Brady Campaign makes no such claim that these are accurate numbers. What they're doing is they're taking an average of aggregated data from other sources. The purpose of this video is to look behind these numbers. The Brady Campaign uses the United States Center for Disease Control's data to substantiate these numbers. So we're going to take a closer look at these. Now I've moved down to the section of the website where Brady substantiates its methodologies. And the summary of those methodologies is that according to the CDC, or the Center for Disease Control, that on average 268 Americans are shot each day, which of course when multiplied by 365 days per year means that allegedly 97,820 Americans are shot each year on average. But I want to look further into this data. This is another page from the Brady's website that kind of summarizes how they arrived at these numbers. And I compared these to the CDC's source data, and the numbers are accurate. However, as it has been often said, figures don't lie, but liars do figure. So let's delve into the nitty-gritty of the Brady Campaign's analysis. I know that all this statistical work is pretty boring in comparison to seeing really neat guns and shooting accessories and all that. But freedom is hard work, folks. That's all there is to it. So sorry about that, but let's dive into the data. The first area we'll explore is fatalities that include the use of firearms. Now, I've printed out all of the source data just to make it easier to flip back and forth among the different pieces of data. In addition, I'm going to round the numbers off in a manner different from the Brady Campaigns, just to make it a little easier, and because their source data has a certain rounding error anyway. The first thing is that the Brady Campaign alleges, and the CDC agrees, that there are 31,600, or roughly 31,600, violent deaths involving firearms every year in the United States. Of course, that is a tragedy, but the Brady Campaign is hiding several pertinent facts. First, what they don't tell you is that roughly 18,000 of those gun-related deaths are suicides. In fact, the statistical number is more than half, about 56%. Now, of course, the Brady Campaign will argue, and does argue, that if a gun were not available to the victim, then that suicide could have been prevented. But we'll talk about that later. The second thing the Brady Campaign relies on is that 12,000, or roughly 12,000 people were murdered by use of firearms. Now, I have a real problem with this. The CDC does agree that there were approximately 12,000 homicides involving a firearm, but the use of the word murdered by the Brady Campaign is, in my opinion, very misleading. Although the terms homicide and murder are often interchanged, there is a slight but important legal distinction. In most jurisdictions, murder is the intentional and unlawful taking of the life of another human being. By contrast, the term homicide is any taking of another person's life. So all murders are homicides, but not all homicides are murders. So let's explore what we mean by that by example. If I just go and shoot my neighbor across the street and kill him because I find him annoying, that's murder. Just by the way, I did not and would not do that. He's a good guy. If, however, my neighbor came over and tried to strangle me, and in the struggle, I shoot him and kill him, that's still a homicide, but it's not a murder. It's what's called a justifiable homicide. There's a legal justification, and in that example, that justification would be self-defense. So what I'm claiming here is that the Brady Campaign is taking the number of 12,000 people, quote unquote, murdered, and including in that number all forms of homicide, including all potential justifiable homicides. How do I arrive at that conclusion? Because the Brady Campaign's information does indicate 12,000 people murdered, but has no separate category for justifiable homicides. So either they're ignoring them in total, or they're including them together. My guess is that they're including them. Another reason I believe that these numbers are fudged is because their source data does not make the distinction either. The CDC's information does not distinguish between murders and homicides. Now, I don't think the CDC is misleading anybody, because the CDC's source data is not entitled murder, it's entitled homicides. So if the Brady Campaign's numbers are correct, it means that there was not one instance in an entire year where a civilian shot and killed another person, either in self-defense or in defense of others, or for some other legally justifiable reason. And I find that assertion that there were no justifiable homicides committed with a firearm to be completely incredible. The remainder of the gun deaths the Brady Campaign alleges are a combination of three other categories. One, police intervention, which it does not break out whether the police intervention was justifiable or not, at roughly 300 incidents, and another 300 incidents of undetermined intent. So there's really not much to talk about there because we don't know what it is. Finally, they break out that there were approximately 600 accidental gun deaths in the United States every year. With somewhere in the neighborhood of 300 million guns in the United States, 600 accidental deaths seems like a pretty low accident rate, but again, we'll talk about that later. Moving on to gun injuries, the Brady Campaign alleges, and the CDC agrees, that there are approximately 68,000 gun-related injuries in the United States every year. It appears to me that the Brady Campaign is once again fudging the numbers. The campaign alleges that there were approximately 44,500 firearms-related injuries based on quote-unquote attacks. But it appears to me that the Brady campaign is lumping all uses of firearms where injuries were caused, regardless of the motive or legal justification. By example again, if my neighbor came over and tried to strangle me, and in self-defense I shoot him but do not kill him and just wound him, that is considered an attack, quote unquote, by the way the Brady campaign compiles these figures. What leads me to this conclusion? It's simple, that the Brady campaign does not distinguish justifiable uses of force using a firearm versus non-justified uses of a firearm causing injuries. So it certainly appears that they are fudging the numbers in a manner consistent with the gun death figures that we talked about previously. Secondly, of the approximately 68,000 gun-related injuries alluded to in both the CDC's source data and the Brady campaign, approximately 3,000 of those injuries are suicide attempts in which the victim was unsuccessful. In addition, there were approximately 700 incidents of gun-related injuries due to police intervention. The final component of the gun-related injuries are accidental shootings. The Brady campaign and the CDC report that there are approximately 18,500 accidental shooting injuries every year. Now, I don't know if that number is correct, but that is certainly something that all of us in the gun community should be working to minimize and should take very seriously, of course. Further, I'd like to discuss something that is noticeably absent from the Brady campaign's public information. In 2003, the CDC, who also happens to be the organization that the Brady campaign gets its source data from, put out a report regarding firearms laws in the United States. The purpose of this report, or this study, was to examine the effect of firearms laws on incidents of gun violence and gun accidents in the appropriate jurisdictions. The bottom line is that there is no credible evidence that either removing guns from society or further restricting the use of firearms has any net effect on a reduction of deaths and injuries resulting from firearms. This, of course, undermines the Brady campaign's arguments for further restricting our Second Amendment rights. So as to the Brady campaign's public information, I say liar, liar, pants on fire, if you want to get technical about it. So when the Brady campaign puts out fudge numbers, we want to be able to refute that with real numbers, not just say, oh, they're full of crap. And just remember, as it's evident here, that figures don't lie, but liars do figure. This is the Suburban Sentinel. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe. Shoot safely, everybody.